For as long as mankind has been able to drive cars, they have always wanted to drive a car underwater. But we at Tabletop Time dared to ask not what if submarine car, but what if submarine tank? That's right, we have finally produced our long-awaited dream miniature, which is 20 inches long. This puts the concept of centerpiece model to shame, and in today's video, I'm going to be building and fully painting a land sub. This is the dumbest, most ridiculous, most joyful thing, and I'm really excited to share it with you. It is peak like Saturday morning cartoon, so dumb it's cool, or so cool it's dumb. The build involves a lot of 3D printing, and I'm gonna go grab some prints right now. And when filming, there's always a bit of a balance between PPE and presenting to camera, but I think today I found the solution, because I'm gonna wear my mask, but I need some audio, so.
I'm sure this will be fine. Let's do it. Here's most of a kindred land sub. The track assemblies. So I'm really excited.
I can't believe how good a take that was. That was clean. All right, well, now that we've done a deep dive on the printing process, let's start building this, and I can tell you a little bit about the lore and backstory and why we even made it. Let's do it. Jax has done a great job of hollowing all of this out, and it actually lands you with 6 pieces of the lower hull, 6 pieces of deck above, as well as a nose cone. Now, there are a lot of supports to make this as hollow as it is, and it's as hollow as it is, so A, it uses less resin, which I guess then some of that gets made up in supports, but it's also that hollow so it's wieldable on the tabletop. So it's not so heavy that it crushes the tread system underneath. So I use some hot water submerging the parts, and then I can just gently peel all of the supports away here. Now I'm gonna confess to something, everybody. On this one model, I'm not cleaning any of this up because the stars have aligned, and I feel like the Kindred of the Abyss is like the only faction of models where the little pock marks that get left by the resin supports actually look almost exactly like barnacles, crazily like barnacles. Now, where I do need to clean them up is where any of the points contact and glue together, because it will help the pieces go together quite nicely. And the way the supports are laid out actually does minimize the amount of supports on any of those visible areas anyway. So I'm really only talking about a few small patches, and I'm just not too worried about them. So all of that is printed, washed, cleaned. We have this absurd pile of parts for the Kindred of the Abyss land sub, and it is a massive undertaking to make this behemoth. Now, there are 2 distinct elements to the land sub. There is the hull, the central submarine part, and there is also the tread assembly. Now, in the burgeoning lore for the Kindred of the Abyss, their submarines and all of their vehicles can basically deploy into these harnesses that allow them to move on land. Most of them use walker legs. However, this vehicle uses big treads. To start the build, I am going to focus on the hull first. When assembling the land sub, there are these pegs that have been produced, and they slot into place between all the elements and allow them to go together really well. So I put the lower hull assembly all together, let that glue, and then I build the upper deck and glue that on as well. This is a test print as well as a video. So there were a couple of components that we decided we'd revisit, add some extra supports to. So one of the pieces has a little bit of shrinkage where in the future it won't. And for that piece in particular, I just used some milliput to kind of fill that out roughly. I've got plans to texture over the top of it later, so I'm not too worried. There's also a little hole in the side where a drainage hole was punched, and that'll get fixed up as well, but that's already been rectified in the files. So while this was designed in the studio in terms of conceptualized, it was further refined and I guess adapted by Jackson from Golden Dragon Games. We've worked with Jackson on the entire Kindred of the Abyss line, and this is his last model for the faction. He's just finished up a command squad for them, which has been released, and he does an amazing job on making these ludicrous concepts feel like properly engineered, realistic things. And if you like more of those kinds of miniatures, I actually recommend you go check out Marcher. I'll put a link in the description. It's a diesel punk war game we've covered on the channel before, and it's one that Jackson does. And I kind of want to give him a bit of a plug just as a thank you for all his hard work. He's continued to make amazing stuff for the Kindred of the Abyss. And yeah, if you're a treadhead and you like that kind of diesel punk interwar militaria, Jackson makes amazing stuff over at Marcher. But I'm making amazing stuff right here in the studio, and it's time to move on to making the lower tread assembly. This assembly was designed combining some of the concepts of things we loved in science fiction media, such as the 4-treaded Scorpion tank from Halo, similarly the Mammoth and Apocalypse tanks from Command & Conquer, but then it took real-world inspiration from large earth-moving machines, and in particular NASA's Crawler transporter, that giant multi-track thing that can move, well, literal space rockets. When building out the world for Kindred, we want things to be science fiction feasible. So basically it's sci-fi, but we want the engineering to at least be consistent in the world of, nonsense. So Jackson was really good in designing this system such that it was 2 components that are then coupled together. The drivetrain connects, the rear elements connect up into the power plant of the submarine. And in some crazy way, it makes sense how all of this could work. Is it practical? No, of course it's not, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that it could conceivably work. Now, many components on the land sub are provided as a single model and you have to mirror them, and the same is true for the lower assembly. You basically have one entire half of it, which is tracks that you print 2 of, as well as the stern and aft versions of the mount for the ship. And then you just mirror that in any slicing software, and then you print them and glue them together. So by gluing all of those components together and then printing out the central coupler, I can assemble the undercarriage of this, which now gives me a seamless piece that I can plonk the top of the land sub into. So I mentioned that we wanted the land sub's lower assembly to be modular, basically that it was 2 pieces that joined together, and there's a reason for that. In the internal lore of the Kindred of the Abyss, Kindred raiding parties set out in attack squadrons. They leave their great deep cities or rig cities to raid the coastline, and they need to be able to bring everything with them. As they're working off a very small number of modified designs of old sci-fi exploration submarines that they've converted into war machines, the number of pieces of equipment they have is actually kind of limited. Each one is old and starting to fall into worse and worse maintenance as they forget how to look after their own equipment as the centuries have passed. So we're designing most of our equipment to be transportable on these rear cargo racks on the land sub. And as I neatly segue into that, you'll see that I've printed and have been cleaning up and am now gluing on all of the rear components on the back of the land sub, as well as the conning tower. The rear of the land sub has these 4 cargo holsters, as well as a crane that is a multi-part crane that you can assemble and pose any way you want, and if you would like to, string it up with your own ropes and cords, which I'll do later in this video to make it look really cool and functional. But it is with this cargo platform that they can transport various things. From 4 bathyspheres, which they use to transport freshly harvested slaves and victims from their people they raid, to the bathysphere light walkers. It can transport 2 of these light walkers in a different configuration. And a cool feature on the front of the ship is, of course, the primary armament. There are 3 slots for pintle weapons that I'm leaving empty because I want to evoke more of a U-boat feel. But the primary armament is either a large deck gun or a turret that can put some interesting weapons into it, such as harpoon cannons that they use to hunt giant kraken and feed the people of the deep cities. But yes, I love the vibe of Militaria, so I'm going with the massive, crazy huge deck gun with gun shield. With that said and that done, we have assembled the Kindred land sub. I really hope you're loving the ridiculousness of the land sub. It's been a big dream of ours to make it. It was designed as part of the Kindred of the Abyss campaign, and it's actually unavailable anyway. You can't currently get this model. In fact, not even backers of the Kindred of the Abyss have this model yet. It's the last tabletop mini, aside from some scatter terrain, to be produced for that campaign, and it is almost ready to go out to backers. And the only way you can get this right now is by backing the Sisters of the Old Blood campaign. Whether you want to support us in producing the Sisters minis, or you just love the look of this land sub and the other Kindred of the Abyss minis I'm showing off right now, you can back the Sisters campaign as a supporter and then use the add-on to get the entire Kindred of the Abyss campaign. It is the best price they're ever going to be, so if you would like to get the entire Kindred of the Abyss bundle, which is multiple squads, Command Squad just got released, they look amazing, multiple vehicles, and of course this massive centerpiece land sub. Links are in the description. Thank you very much. And oh my gosh, I really just look forward to seeing people take on this immense challenge and paint their own land subs. The idea that there are going to be some of these behemoths out there in the world is super cool. So I look forward to seeing that. All right, now let's get down to painting. It is ridiculously cold. Australian winter, haha. It's time for me to spray this. I'm gonna get an undercoat of black on everything. because any painting I do, I want the areas you can't really see to have that black undercoat. Shows off the shadows. I just think that's the best way to do things. I'm gonna let this dry, then I'm gonna flip it, spray the bottom, make sure I get all the angles, and then do the top of the sub. This is ridiculous. I want to do something I've basically never done before, and that is paint it like a realistic war machine. Now, what does that mean? Well, to make things interesting across the years, and we're also familiar with Warhammer, really, as the big one, we like to paint everything on models. We like to paint kind of little gubbins and details that don't make much sense to be painted, and it leads to this gorgeous aesthetic for Warhammer of this kind of like feudal regent science fiction world where everything's really colorful and vibrant and has heraldry on it. But that is not the world we're making. I want to paint something that looks like an actual naval vessel. In fact, something that looks like a U-boat. The paint scheme I've chosen for this is the paint scheme of the Kindred City of Defiance. We've previously showed off the paint scheme for New Liberty, which is kind of like the cover faction of the Kindred of the Abyss, and that is a deep city, but Defiance is called a rig city. It's basically a flotilla city, think like Waterworld, built around the ruins of an oil rig. Defiance, as far as Kindred of the Abyss go, are actually some of the more approachable. Yeah, they're still horrible, but they do trade with some people on the surfaces. I said do. And they, of course, engage in horrible raids. But as with any science fiction game or any war game, you do want to have your sort of lighter and darker shades to each faction so that someone who wants to collect them has something they can relate with a little bit more. The Defiance Deep City, based around a flotilla of ships, has a very strong naval identity, and their color scheme is based or derived from an amalgamation of different countries' World War II military paint scheme for their navy. Their sailors have white on them and blue uniforms with white sailor caps, all what you'd sort of expect, and their ships are painted in that naval ship gray. To do all this, I've been masking, as you noticed, and I'm masking because I'm doing airbrushing. The bottom parts of the ship are all being painted red. Now, traditionally, this is because red paint had a lot of iron in it, and this is basically a corrosion-resistant paint that's applied to the bottom of ships to stop barnacles attaching to it and the ship falling apart. Now, as these submarines are coded a little bit more interwar or diesel punk, I wanted it to evoke more of that U-boat vibe than the later nuclear submarine vibe we're all used to, where everything's just black and descends underwater. After the red oxide paint is done, I'm doing a nice strip of blue paint. This is something the US Navy used, a much more deep imperial blue, but this is my opportunity to bring in the blue of Defiance's paint scheme into this model that will mostly not be blue. It's going to be gray and red. As for the top area, as I mentioned, I use gray, airbrushing on a mixture of cold gray and stonewall gray from Viejo and spraying it on all of the upper surfaces. And when I talked about doing a military paint job, this is what I'm talking about. I'm painting every rivet, every detail, every door handle, everything is being sprayed with these paints because that's how you protect the metal of the ship. These Kindred haven't done an amazing job of that, but we're gonna get there. After this is done, I can peel off all of that masking, which is always satisfying, but on a model with so many rivets, you can also see all the little mistakes I've made. So I get a paintbrush and clean them up and just make those lines nice and straight. And then I can use some dry brushing to dry brush all of those nice rivets. Dry brushing orange on the red areas to get a real nice iron oxide vibe. Dry brushing a lighter blue and then a lighter gray on those areas respectively. Now, while I've done that to the ship, it's time to paint the undercarriage. And the undercarriage, with all of this gorgeous detail, is actually going to be the easiest thing to paint on the whole model. That's right, I airbrush the entire thing red, and then I dry brush the entire thing with this orange paint. And the biggest shock is, I leant back and I was just like, this is it. This is what it should look like, which I think is what starts to happen when you're operating in the scale that this vehicle actually looks like a submarine. It looks like a piece of military equipment, not like a toy. So I think my brain expects big engineered pieces of equipment to be a single color. Also, this will keep the attention on the top of the model, and Jackson's done this amazing thing with the Kindred designs where he's kind of warbled the texture of all of the metal, and it means there's all these delicious surfaces to pick up with the dry brush. So the bottom part just looks sick. I actually love the look of the oxide painted lower assembly as they're trying desperately to stave off corrosion in the ocean. However, they have not fully succeeded in staving off corrosion because it's now time to weather the vehicle. The Kindred are a society of inbred cannibalistic psychos who lack the competencies as well as the knowledge to adequately care for their equipment. They're basically at the point where they can do the bare minimum, they can keep things going, but as the centuries extend, their capacities get worse and worse, not better and better. So I think at this point, 500 or 600 years after the Cataclysm, starting to see ships with rust and disrepair on the non-essential elements actually plays really well. So the first step with doing this weathering was to create some big rusty chunks, and the areas I wanted to focus these were really simple. A couple splattered around for detail's sake, that's not important. A few big chunky pieces to hide some of the worst of the gaps, because if you break up the panel line gap or the bad milliput job with a big splotch of textured rust, it kind of like short circuits your brain and you don't see that it's a big seam, it just looks like it's all deliberate. The second place I want to put these chunks of rust, which I'm using a texture paste for, a dirt texture, so it can get that like lumpy vibe of corroded metal, is on all of the areas of the ship that are less important. So that's the side railing elements, the handrails on the ship. It starts to look like their maintenance and discipline is eroding around the areas where, you know, the ship's not going to sink if they've failed to do it. Following this, I use a sepia wash, watered down with some airbrush thinner, applied with a brush, dragging down from any points where it would pool, and ocean water would run over and spilling off the deck over and over again after surfacing. I accentuate this by getting a toothpick and dragging it down, and over time you can build up an effect that looks really cool across the whole model. So I do that on the left and right of the sub, and then it's time for me to plant it in its base. With the submarine descended into its base, I can really start to get a look at it, but more importantly, I don't have to keep handling it, so I can weather all of the top of the vehicle. But before I do that, I want to play with a little toy. This is the Goblin Hobbies Stampin' Starter Kit. Brent and Casey, that's Brent from Goobertown Hobbies, Casey from eBay Miniature Rescues, started a company called Goblin Hobbies, and they made this stampin' kit. And they showed me how to use this stampin' kit at Adepticon last year. They create these stampin' panels, which I'm showing off in the video, and use some nail paint as well as a stamp to put designs on miniatures. But I saw on one of these plates a design for a deep sea anglerfish, and I wanted to stamp a couple of these on the conning tower and one on the gun shield just to make this look good. Now this is my first time doing this except for my one-off demo. So I made a few mistakes on the front of the gun shield, but I'm fixing that up with a bit of corrosion. But overall, I did say, once I'd practiced a few times, I found the experience super easy. So I think it's worth checking out. It's a really cool thing. There's a bunch of videos they've done on it if you want a deeper dive, but I thought I'd shout that out. It's a cool tool, so yeah, go have a look. Link will be in the description. But you're only allowed to click on that after you've backed the Sisters campaign, so click on the top link first, then the one underneath. All right, with cool design stamped on, I can finish up the weathering of all of the top components and also the bits that glue onto it. I continued the same process that I'd done for the whole vehicle until everything had a nice amount of sepia on it and gunk. And then it was time to accentuate the disrepair of the ship only in those areas where it was the worst by grabbing a toothpick and a tiny bit of orange rust technical and stabbing it around the top surfaces of those handrails and also a couple of the really big patches of rust. By keeping this to focal areas, I do think I've evoked the design that the ship isn't falling apart, but it does have some areas that need a bit of love and attention pretty quickly. With all that rust done, I also painted the windows in the conning tower using Murray's favorite paint from Games Workshop, Incubi Darkness, and highlighting that up, keeping it nice, grim and murky, as if it's reflecting the dark green ocean of our world. And the final piece to complete for this, before I could call it done, is I went and grabbed some nylon rope from my hardware store, and I used this to string up the crane. I mentioned earlier you string up this crane, which reminded me of Lego kits. When I was a kid, they used to have Lego kits with cranes, and you do all this with them. And with my crane strung up, I can put it on the vehicle, and we can check out some reveals of something I'm so excited to share with you. The Kindred land sub. Is it our greatest creation ever? You decide. So it's time for the patron names to roll across the screen, and I just wanted to say a big thank you to our patrons. We've already done a few small plugs in this video, so I'm not going to go into the spiel this time, but suffice is to say, I appreciate you, and because of you, I'm doing this as a job. So thank you, patrons. I feel like this model encapsulates that idea that if you take something silly seriously enough for long enough, it comes all the way back around to genuinely being cool. Like the concept of this land submarine on these NASA launch platform treads rolling out of the ocean, plowing everything out of the way is ridiculous. But it doesn't need to be real. It's part of our science fiction miniature war game world, and we get to paint the perfect combo of submarine, all the U-boat stylings, and tank, crawler that we can play on a land-based battlefield. It's really cool, and I think in this experience I've realized how much I love ships. I mean, I play Drop Fleet and now I've painted this thing like military style, this massive ship, and I'm like, yeah, I think I'm a naval guy. When I was like 15, I went on a holiday to Hawaii and my dad took me to the USS Missouri, and I think that has left a lasting imprint on my brain. Thank you all for watching this video. Amazing job, Jackson, in realizing this concept and creating it and using your knowledge of like real engineering that makes sense to make something cool out of it. I really love it. And of course, thanks for watching. Now remember, if you want to get this and you didn't back the Kindred campaign, the only way to get this model is to back the Sisters of the Old Blood campaign. Go to the links in our description. If you only want the Kindred minis, you can back it as a supporter and then use the add-on to get the entire Kindred bundle. That's every model, including this amazing centerpiece, which look, if you don't wanna find a way to play with it or use the one-page rules we've provided, you can use this as an amazing piece of terrain. I showed my friends and they were just like, whoa, our next kill team board looks sick. There's gonna be some scatter terrain coming from the Kindred as well, and including that, I'm definitely gonna do a gangway ramp so you can sort of integrate these into battlefields. It is only through your support of our campaigns that we can make stuff like this, and I'd love to see the Sisters hit greater heights, reach some more of those stretch goals, and realize some more cool minis. And by doing stuff like supporting the Kindred through the Sisters campaign, you're enabling that to happen. The giant land train looks pretty difficult to reach at this stage, but there's always a 1 in a million chance we get the land train still. Come on, giant multi-part Victorian war train, bigger than the land sub, let's do it!